Empowering Menarche and Puberty webinar. We're really excited that you've been able to join us today, and we are really excited that you're here to talk about the steps that you can take to really ensure that you're on the right track to being able to support your daughter through her puberty and into her menarche. It is such an amazing and special time in development, and we're here to make that journey a little bit easier. So I'm Amanda, and this is Sahara, and we are from Weaving the Red Thread, where we provide positive menstrual education. We do have beautiful mother-daughter workshops. We're also launching our online menstruality studio this year, and we work with women and menstruators to really empower them to deeply understand their bodies, their physiology, and how they can work to be the healthiest, happiest version of themselves. So welcome.
Welcome. A really big aspect of all the work that we do with the girls, the women and the menstruators is, how do I practice self-care? Because at the end of the day, if we're not looking after us, how we show up in the world is flavored by how we're feeling in our bodies, how we're feeling in our minds, how we're feeling in our hearts, how we're feeling in relation to other people. And so a huge aspect of everything we do is actually checking in with self and going, what do I need? And once we actually enter menstrual living, it's a cyclical living, that we actually live within a menstrual cycle that has a hormonal rhythm within it. And how we feel each day can change. And there's 4 different phases to the cycle. How we feel in those different phases can change quite radically. So there's quite a lot of empowerment out there in the menstrual world on the inner seasons, and understanding how the flows helps you to show up with your capacity to do what you need to do while practicing self-care for the different needs that are throughout the different phases. And this is something that women and menstruators who are cycling or have cycled can actually understand, this because it's something that's embodied. With the girls, it's something that they will move into. So it's something that we can teach them and seed thoughts. And a really big aspect for that as mums is role modeling. So we've sort of got this little thing about how to empower menarche and puberty. And there's 4 general aspects. One is role modeling, which is all about what we do in the home. So how do I show up as a menstruating mother? How do I show up as a menstruating woman? How do I show up as a menstruating partner? How do I show up as a menstruating businesswoman? How do I show up as a menstruating, fill in the gap for whatever role works for you? And we know that our children are downloading constantly from what they see as adult. So they're looking to the female or the menstruator in the house and going, well, when I move into this sort of phase, how does it work? So they're constantly observing. So that's one of the first things that we really like to talk to the mums about is, what's your experience and how can you help your daughter to actually move into this part of her life with your support through just what you're doing.
And I will say as well, like we've worked with mothers that aren't menstruating. So how do you have that conversation if you're not able to role model physically through your body, but you're role modeling through your actions and through your setup of your bathroom and through your conversations and through your normalization of working around correct language and what you're doing with the terminology that you're using. So with role modeling, you know, I'm a mother and I've got 3 children and 2 of them are boys, and I role model as much for my boys as I do for my daughter. So when we come into being comfortable, and you have to find your own comfortability in your level of exposure, in your level of privacy that you need to feel comfortable in your own body. But one of the easiest ways to really normalize this process is by having a cycle check-in. So it's something that Sahara and I have embedded within our practice of communication. I've got to say, it highlights how well women work together when we're in collaboration, when we know where we're sitting, when we know which phase of the cycle are we coming into, and how might that be impacting the way that we communicate? How might it impact our self-care needs? So by being really aware of where you are in your cycle, you may start to notice a little bit of a pattern where your daughter might be coming to as well, because our girls start cycling well before we get a menstrual period and before there are a lot of physical changes that are happening as well. So I know my daughter, we can pretty much pick the days before and I'll go, yep, that's that little dip before the menstrual cycle begins again, that she really has some big emotions and some big feelings coming up and big surges of hormones that are happening silently and quietly around her body. So one of the most beautiful ways with role modeling is, you know, where are your menstrual products? How are you checking in with your cycle? Do you acknowledge your cycle? Are you saying out loud, well, I'm bleeding and today's my first day of my menstrual cycle and this is how I'm feeling, or this is what's going on for me? Are you acknowledging that with other women that you're in collaboration with or that you might communicate with? Is your daughter present? Is your son's present? How does that feel to have that open communication with other people around it as well? So to give you an idea of what that cycle check-in looks like for us, you know, when we begin a meeting or if we're meeting with somebody new for the first time, we just take a moment to really land in the space that we're in, take a couple of deep breaths, just acknowledge how we're feeling today, and then share with the other person, you know, I'm on day 5 of my menstrual cycle and I'm feeling really happy and vibrant and open. If I was on day 26 of my cycle, I probably would have some different words that I'd be using about how I'm feeling in terms of the need for self-care and fragility that I have as well.
And I'm on day 3 and I'm feeling quite tired. I haven't had an opportunity to really rest the last couple of days, and that definitely today was like, nope, I'm canceling what I'm supposed to be doing this morning, because if I don't take some time now to rest, I'm going to feel that as I move out of the bleeding phase of my cycle and into the follicular pre-ovulation phase where the energy is all rising up to ovulation. I'm actually going to crash somewhere there because I haven't rested in this part of the phase, which naturally, because all the hormones are so much lower and there's a release phase, that it actually asks for some rest in there. And rest can look different for every single person, and depending on the time that you have available for it, it can be very, very potent. So it's something I'd like to invite you all to do now. If you feel comfortable, we're just going to take a minute's worth of silence and just to see how potent something so small can be. If you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes or you can lower them down. And in that minute, I just invite you to actually ground here and now, to connect in with your breath. And on the other side of it, I'm just going to ask you to check in with yourself and do your own cycle check-in. You may know what day you're on, you may not. You may have an active cycle, you may not. If you're not, then you're cycling with the moon, and the moon is actually waning at the moment, which means that it's decreasing and it's moving towards no moon. So this is where the moon's energy is getting less and less and less reflective of the premenstrual phase of the cycle going into the menstrual phase. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes down or just lower them and allow yourself to just be in this moment. And slowly keeping your eyes lowered or closed, I invite you to check in. What's happening in your mind? Is it busy? Is it quiet? Is it nervous, anxious, excited, curious? What's the mental chatter that's going on? and checking in with your heart. How are you feeling today? Where's your energy at? Are you feeling happy, tired, present, distracted? And checking in with your body. How does it feel to be in your body? Is it comfortable? Is there pain? Is there tightness? Is there aliveness? Is it all just flowing and it just feels really comfortable? So checking in for a cycle check-in is as simple as taking a minute to stop and be present with yourself, to see where you are mentally, emotionally, and physically. And in that, to see what your needs are. So before you come out of this, just check in and go, what am I needing right now? I know for me, it's like, I'm needing rest. And tomorrow I've scheduled some time out because otherwise I won't be able to go where my cycle wants to take me this cycle because I'm right at the beginning and I'm exhausted. And so once we start to listen to what our needs are, the second thing is to create some spaciousness for them. Because as women and as mums, in this modern 21st century where we wear so many different hats and have so many different responsibilities, the biggest thing that mums tell us is, I don't have time. The best thing that you could do for yourself and for your daughter is to create moments of time. Even a minute is incredibly powerful. And as we said, your daughters are looking at you to go, how do I move into becoming a woman? And menarche and puberty is not, you've become a woman. It is a blossoming. Puberty is on average 8 to 10 years. And it starts way before we see anything on the outside of the body. The hormones are dancing on the inside and they're preparing and they're waking things up. And then we start to see changes with, you know, the breast starting to bud, and there might be some pubic hair happening. There might be some shape happening. And all this happens before the period comes. Menarche symbolizes that the body is now ready to ovulate. To then establish a regular menstrual cycle can take, for some girls, it's straight away. For other girls, it can take years to actually establish that. And so they're looking, going, where am I going? So they're looking at all the women around them. And the reason that we said role modeling is one of the most powerful things you can do within our culture across the globe, it's pretty rare for menstrual conversations to be open, to be informing, and to be empowering. And that is why you may be here today, because this may not have been your experience and that you'd like something different for your daughters across the whole spectrum, from menarche through to menstruation, through to fertility, contraception, sexuality, pregnancy, birthing, through to the menstrual menopause transition, which is what we refer to perimenopause at, because you're actually transitioning out. And again, this is a long process, a 10 to 15-year process for most people. It starts in their late 30s, early 40s, into menopause and postmenopause. These conversations are not happening. And so we don't know where we are heading. If we have female biology, we don't necessarily know where we are heading with it. And it is constantly in motion. We're moving into a motion. We live that motion. Then we're moving out of that motion into creating a new way of being on the other side of it. And so our girls are looking at women to go, what does that look like? But we're not having the conversations. We're not living it openly because our culture has told us that's not okay. That's something we don't talk about. And something that Amanda and I are very passionate about is normalizing this, supporting mums, women, menstruators, girls, to normalize this as a biological process that creates a rhythm within your body, which influences how you show up in the world. And to make it as normal as, you know, how's your gut health? Everyone's pretty on par with that. We know gut health is so important to our holistic well-being. You know, probiotics. If you don't understand gut health, you know, there's the probiotics. Are you having yogurt? Are you taking some kind of probiotic? Because we know that this actually underpins the health of our body. Something that a lot of people are not aware of is that the menstrual cycle is considered to be the 5th vital sign of life. So for women, that means it's as an important feedback as your heart rate, your blood pressure, your temperature, and your respiratory rate. They're all considered to be signs of life. And if they are moved too far in one direction, we get symptomology or language in the body, and it highlights that something is out. The menstrual cycle is exactly the same. So if we can't talk about it because we don't have the language or the confidence, or most importantly, the comfortability, then how do we talk about when things aren't working? And it's endometriosis month at the moment, and 1 in 6 Australian women, 1 in 9, I get my 6 and 9s back to front, excuse me, suffer endometriosis. And on average, it takes 6.5 years for that to be diagnosed, because pain is normalized in our society. It's considered normal for menstruators to experience pain and to experience debilitating pain. We're here to tell you, we're here to tell your girls, this isn't normal. Yeah. And the girls are asking, they want to know what's normal. In South Australia, they did a study, and what our kids are looking for, they're not getting in the school system, and they want to know, what is this? Like, they're curious, their bodies are changing and they're curious. So the way that we communicate with them and the language that we use, if they're coming and asking you questions, answer them. If you're feeling discomfort, that is totally fine. We all come from generations where this is levels of discomfort for people. You know, our daughters don't necessarily have that discomfort unless society gives it to them. And especially the younger they are, the more curious they are and the more open they are to these conversations. And if they have questions, it shows you that they're contemplating and they want answers. So I really encourage you to use language that is appropriate to their age, that is scientific and anatomical, and is explanatory of what the process is, not necessarily in metaphor and symbology, but actually in the reality of what it is. And that links back into the role modeling too, because if they see what you're doing, what products you use, how you self-care for yourself, and that it also brings in the difference of that we have a period with potentially an unpleasant premenstruum versus we have a menstrual cycle that gives us a feedback to how we've been living in the first half of the cycle, and that in every single phase we have different self-care needs. So the premenstruum gets a really bad rap, and it definitely is a period of the cycle where we have become more internal, our energy becomes more internal, and that is unique to you, to how extroverted and introverted you are as a personality in the world and what your needs are. But the premenstruum definitely invites reflection and slowing down, whatever that means for you, so that you can actually look at things, you can finish stuff up, you can edit things, you can reflect, so that you've actually got spaciousness in your bleed to be able to stop to whatever degree you want to and whatever degree you're able to.
And you can make those stopping moments part of family life as well. Family life is busy. You don't have to step out of your role completely, but by understanding the phases of your menstrual cycle, you can plan ahead and go, you know what, if I'm on at ovulation and I am so shiny and bright and I'm ready for the world and I just seem to have everything under control all of the time, double meal prep so that in the next phase of your cycle, you're all of a sudden not under the pump to have to go and do all of those extra jobs on your list. You take something off the intensity for the times that you really need that extra self-care and nourishment. I know for me, you know, my household generally tends to know when I'm coming into dark moon and menstruation time, because my headphones come out and I put them on, these bright pink headphones, and I cruise around the house and I put my music on. And it just gives me enough of a buffer zone with 3 very busy, vibrant children that I can get a little bit of time for myself to have a little bit more brain space for self-care. Can be as simple as the types of products that you get out at different phases of your cycle, whether that's a self-care basket that you keep. And this is what we start to teach girls as young as 8 and role model for girls and boys at a very young age. What's in your self-care basket? So when you're setting up your menstrually friendly bathroom, what that looks like is having these kind of products out and normalizing their use. So it is having your menstrual products out on the shelves or in a beautiful basket or in a gorgeous, cosmetic case that you can set up and have in a really beautiful space in your bathroom or in your toilet if that's easier for you. But start to bring these things out of the back shelves and out of the bottom of the cupboards hidden down the back that you've got to scrape through to find what you need. Or the menstrual undies, if you're using menstrual undies or cups, once they're washed, pack them back in a really beautiful way. Include your spritzers or sprays or essential oils. There's so many things that can go into your self-care kit. It might be the music that you really love. It might be some sort of, what else do we put in our self-care baskets?
We have crystals.
Right.
We have Rescue Remedy, which is an awesome thing to have around. We have, journals, mindful coloring in. We have chocolate. We have teas. We have, it's kind of like candles. Yeah. What is it? And every person's personality is different from what self-care is. Self-care is incredibly unique. So it's actually going, okay, well, what is it that nourishes me? And this is something in our workshops, and we've created these amazing journals for the girls to take home and work through, that we really explore this concept of not only of rhythm. So we look at, if you look at the rhythms that influence all human beings, we live on a planet that is rotating around a sun in a solar system in the universe, which creates our seasons. So we've got this huge environmental rhythm that affects us. You think how you eat or dress or move differently from summer to winter. And then this affects all humans regardless of their biology or of their age. And then we've got the moon going around Earth on its own 27.34 Earth days, which I just love that. And it affects the bodies of water on our Earth to create the tides. We're 60% water. It's affecting every single human being and the biological function. So if you actually think, it's really weird, if you think of inside your skin, this is not solid. This is predominantly water. So water is held by something. So you've got a cup holding water, your skin holds water. And in that water, the biochemical physiology of your body actually happens. So everyone talks about hydration and how important hydration is, because the actual running of the internal reality of your body on a chemistry scientific level happens within the matrix of water. So if we don't have it, then it's like a fish out of water for some of the processes. They just don't work so well because they don't have their medium. And then we have a sun that rises and sets. It works for every single human being, the circadian rhythm within our body, which all our organs and our systems work with. So different things are on during the day, different things are on during the night, which allows our body to be present, to be our vehicle, to be active and engaged with the world, and to sleep, so that all the different rejuvenation and repair and growth can happen while we're actually resting and not asking the body to do anything. So this affects every single human being. Men, through puberty, they establish their own hormonal rhythm as well. It's a 24-hour rhythm, like the day-night rhythm, and sleep is super important to them for that hormonal rhythm. Females have the menstrual cycle, which creates an internal rhythm, which on average is a 28-day cycle. And so all humans on Earth are being run and influenced by different rhythms. So this is something that we go into through symbology, through movement, through storytelling, through talking about self-care allies, of how do we actually understand that we're not linear creatures. We're not on our calendar that takes us from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and then we start a new year. We're constantly in a rhythm that is affecting us. Some of them we feel really sensitively, other of them we may not feel at all. And again, it depends on your personality to how much you're going to feel the effect of different things. The reality is they are all affecting us. And then how do we self-care at different times? Again, you know, that really easy example of summer versus winter. You know, in winter, which is akin to menstruation, we're going to be looking for potential more rest, more quiet time, more warmth. Like if you think about menstrual cramps or discomfort, the healing aid for that, the well-being ally, is warmth. We can apply that externally through a heat pack. We can take it internally by, you know, drinking ginger tea. And these are the things that we want to empower your girls with, is the knowledge of how do I look after myself? Because let's be honest, we're not learning this at school. I didn't learn this. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I've worked in the department. They are doing, you know, they're doing a good basic job, but they're not actually teaching our children about the bodies they live within and how to actually look after them. And I know when I left school, that's why I ended up where I did, because I was like, I have this body. I don't know how to look after it. I know how to have an awesome conversation and how to paint and do all these incredible cognitive skills, but I don't know how to look after myself. So that started my own journey for me. And I'm passionate about passing that on to the younger generation so that it is part of their foundational education. So they don't have to find it when they're in dysfunction, because for a lot of women, they've found this knowledge through menstrual dysfunction, through fertility dysfunction. And then they realize that there's so much about their bodies that they were never taught. So we are passionate in a very gentle way to educate the girls about the bodies they live within and how to actually care for them.
In education, gosh, wouldn't it all be different if we were actually taught about how to work with our own biology? We've never been gifted this information. We've had to go out and search for it, and it has been hidden in all sorts of different places. And Sahara and I both actually have a similar level of education in terms of we've studied similar subjects. We've gone through and done a Bachelor of Naturopathy to give us an understanding of the holism and the ways that the body works and the importance of the biochemistry and the physiology. We've also then gone and done yoga training. We've then both gone and done more work within women's circles and trying with different mentors, discovering these pearls of wisdom that when we've placed all of this together, becomes a positive menstrual education that we're offering. So when we're talking about education, we're really talking about education that honors the feminine biology and works with the different phases of that cycle. So when you're discussing these different phases, we don't expect that you're going to know exactly what we're talking about. It's not something that we've been given direct knowledge of when we've gone through school. We're trying to shift this for our daughters, but often from a mothering perspective, we're coming from an education perspective where we're not really sure about what we're talking about. We know kind of the basics, like, yes, you will bleed, and yes, you have a cycle, and, you know, it shouldn't be painful, but that's kind of where we've been left. And that's what we consistently hear from mums, or their daughter gets into a space of dysfunction and they have horrible, painful periods. They've got heavy periods that they're flooding. There's dysfunction coming through. They're emotionally traumatized from PMS explosions because the whole household is synced together. And we see that complete dysfunction that is societally normalized of, well, off you go to the doctor to get on the pill. Our ovaries take a good 10 years from the time that we begin this process to the time that they are fully mature. Putting in hormonal dysregulators at the point in time of puberty, we see that in clinical practice at 35, at 40, in fertility dysfunction, in all sorts of menstrual dysfunction. So I really want to highlight that when you're going through this education process, to start asking questions if there does become a conversation around, well, there's something to fix. The menstrual cycle, it's our 5th vital sign of life. How we experience our menstrual period gives us an indication over what happens during the rest of that whole cycle. And it's checking back in and having some cycle awareness and teaching that to our daughters of what's normal and what's abnormal. Now, when we're looking at a normal menstrual period, we dive into that in our workshops, and we will be continuing to have those conversations. So if you're interested in learning more about what a normal period or a healthy menstrual cycle looks like, please reach out. Those are conversations we can definitely jump into, and we love having them. We've been invited to talk on a radio show which called the Vagina Dialogues, which I'm so excited about. So we're just going to be able to talk about this all of the time to lots and lots of people. So when we're thinking about education, it is something that you are going to have to actively do. It is not something that is going to be provided by the school systems. And I think acknowledging at the moment, even that when we're looking at school systems, that there is a little bit of support that needs to be done even after they've had that education, because they're not teaching correct anatomy. They're not teaching the whole clitoris. They're not using the anatomically correct words in some of the work that they're doing. So I think it's important to sit down and even just ask your girls, what do you know? Tell me what you know about this already. And then where do we go from here? Because we've got a beautiful generation of mothers who are not staying silent, who are being really vocal and honest and open about these menstrual things that have been kept in the dark closet and we don't talk about it.